Hello, for those who joined us, we are just gonna wait a few minutes before we get started so everyone can log on. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the Dementia-Related Behaviors webinar presented by the Plaza Assisted Living. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ray Waitman. I am the Community Relations and Sales Support Director for the Plaza Assisted Living. The Plaza is Hawaii's largest senior living provider in the state of Hawaii. We have 6 communities on the island of Oahu, including Punchbowl, Waikiki, Moanalua, Pearl City, Mililani, and most recently, Kaneohe. We offer independent living, assisted living, memory care, and extended care programs. We are here today to help family and caregivers with strategies for understanding and addressing behavioral issues during the COVID-19 crisis. Before I introduce our presenter, I want to inform you that we will be having a question and answer session after the final presentation. You can utilize the chat option at the bottom of the screen to ask a question. We might not be able to get to everyone's questions, so at the end of the presentation, our contact information will be on the screen, and you're more than welcome to email us your questions and we will get back to you. We also will be recording today's presentation, and we will have a link on our website no later than Monday, June 1st. I would like to introduce our presenter today, David Troxel. David Troxel is a co-author of 6 influential books on dementia care, including the new book, The Best Friend's Approach to Dementia Care with Virginia Bell. He is a past executive director of the Santa Barbara Alzheimer's Association and has been the executive board of American Public Health Association. He is currently a writer and a consultant in the field of long-term care and serves as the Dementia Care Consultant for the Plaza Assisted Living in Honolulu. Take it away, David.
Well, hey, thank you so much, Ray. And of course, I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person during these challenging times, but I've been delighted to continue my partnership up with the Plaza and with my friends in Honolulu. Thank you for all of you who were on the webinar a few weeks ago. And this is all part of a series that's going to happen over the next month where we're going to be doing 2 more webinars, so stay tuned. But today we're going to take the issue on about dementia-related behavior and talk about, some of the challenges that come with being a caregiver or care partner. So in this workshop, we'll talk about possible medical causes of behavior, including pain, depression, and medication issues. And then I'm going to give you the best ideas I can about how to address agitation, anger, exit seeking, paranoia, care refusal, repetitive questions, and a few other issues as well. As always, we'll talk a bit about some resources for you during this special time, because I want to acknowledge it is a very tough time for all of us. But if you're caring for somebody with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia, obviously you have a lot of other challenges without some of the resources that perhaps you've been using before. So let's jump in because I know we have limited time and begin thinking about behavior and the brain and dementia. I'll tell a very short story that's not on the slide, but it's from a family conference I did in Bakersfield, California a couple of years ago. It was a great conference, the good old days when 300 people could get together in a hotel room. And I had a 3-hour block, which is quite luxurious as a speaker to have a whole morning to present. Well, about halfway through, or maybe a third of the way through, I paused to see if there were any questions. And one woman stood up and she said, David, I'm enjoying your presentation. I'm learning about Alzheimer's, but my mother, she has Alzheimer's, and my mother, I think she's just very stubborn. I think she deliberately refuses to do things I want her to do. I think my mother just spends the whole day looking for new ways to push my buttons. Now, I'm not going to deny that, personality patterns still stay intact, and maybe someone with Alzheimer's can still push our buttons. But this daughter, I think clearly, by believing that her mother's behavior was so deliberate, isn't really getting the picture, because I think all of us struggle as care partners to understand behavior, but it does help when we realize that there's a neurological or physical cause for the behavior. The person almost always is not deliberately being forgetful or ornery. This is a disease that impacts the brain. So the example that I gave the woman that day, that you may be wondering why there's a bag of rice there on the screen, is that brain atrophy happens with dementia. It's the loss of brain cells called neurons. And atrophy also destroys the connections that help the brain cells actually communicate. Now, it can be a result of many different diseases, of course, notably Alzheimer's, but even things like stroke. Now, what I want you to hear from me here is that if you imagine a Ziploc bag of rice, the healthy human brain weighs about 3 pounds. So we can kind of visualize that. Well, when somebody has Alzheimer's, there's actually significant loss in the physical volume of the brain. And so during the course of illness, that they may lose a third of that weight of the brain. So this disease is real. It'd be like if I had a broken arm, you could see the cast, but sadly we can't see a broken brain. So where I'm going with this is, as we think about behavior, I want you to understand that empathy becomes very important. Empathy and knowledge, and knowing that it's the disease, not the person. One of my favorite things to tell people is, to learn some of the basics about acceptance, because their behavior is very fixed, it's very real. They're not necessarily going to change, they're going to probably decline. So we have to pivot, we have to change, and we have to develop some new strategies, because remember, it's the disease, not the person. And there is a lot we can do to manage behavior, but we have to begin to become clever and learn some new ideas around dementia. And hopefully you'll learn some of those right now. So again, thinking about just sort of a broad concept of behavior, many of us believe that behaviors are actually the person's response to his or her own world, okay? For example, my mother had Alzheimer's. She passed away in 2008. And sometimes she would hide her purse because she was sure that someone was going to break in and steal it. Now, maybe then she would accuse a caregiver of taking her purse, stealing her purse, because she forgot that she'd hidden the purse. Now, why did she hide that purse? Again, not knowing quite where she is, being a bit insecure, not knowing who the people were around her. Sort of like if we hid something in a hotel room without a safe, you see these behaviors do sometimes have logic. Now, the example here with this kind of cute picture of the couple lost and looking at an old-fashioned map, I guess I should use a GPS phone next time that's maybe broken or something. But imagine that you're traveling in a country where you don't speak the language, you're on vacation, you don't know the language, you know the customs, you get lost. How would that feel? Well, for most of us, if we can't really figure out where we're going, we can't speak the language, we can't necessarily communicate with the natives, I would imagine this would be very stressful, very challenging. And indeed, this happened to me years ago in Tokyo when I was at a meeting long before international cell phones. And I was getting very stressed. I could feel my collar sort of tightening as I was trying to find my way back to the hotel, you see. So you see, people with dementia, it's like they're lost in a foreign country every day. They're trying to navigate, they're trying to figure things out. So we want to understand that if someone gets angry, it may be out of frustration. If they get tearful, it might be out of fear. Many of their behaviors are the same behaviors we would have in the same situation. So that empathy and understanding, if your mother says President Eisenhower is doing a great job, again, she may be living back many years ago, you want to say, Mom, I like Ike too, not what's wrong with you, he's dead. So again, pivoting and empathy, understanding, very important, okay? But these challenges are certainly concerning. I've listed a few here we're going to talk about during this webinar. I want you to also hear one thing very importantly. Many people with Alzheimer's and other dementia, they don't necessarily have an angry phase. People have asked me, like, is there an angry phase, or does this happen, or does that happen? When you've met one person with dementia, you've kind of met one person with dementia. Everybody has their own unique personality and strengths. And there are people, certainly we have them at the Plaza in our Halia memory program, there are people who are pleasantly confused. I certainly hope that's your situation if you're a family member. But of course, today we're going to talk about some of the things on the right of your screen, okay? So let's jump right into some of the problem solving here. And the first step, let's say your mother or your father, or your husband, wife, partner, whoever it is, let's say, you know, they're generally in a pretty good space, you know, pretty agreeable. And then suddenly they begin to get agitated, or over the course of 48 hours, their behavior significantly changes. Well, this is a situation where we want to look for potentially treatable issues or causes that might be triggering the pain, because people with dementia and many elders are less resilient than many of us. And if they have an untreated illness, or we haven't caught something, what happens is it can trigger or worsen behavior. So look for the classic urinary tract infections. These just can almost, you know, put a spell on somebody. Seemingly the behaviors of a UTI can be very perplexing and frightening, and we treat the UTI and the behavior goes away. So that's very helpful. But a couple of other things, I mean, there are many causes, but these are the next three that I think are most important. Depression. We know that depression is there's a long history, a long literature, that depression is an enemy of the brain. There's actually research dating back to the 1950s that people with long histories, particularly untreated clinical depression, actually have a greater risk for cognitive illness. Now, depression seems to be a fellow traveler with Alzheimer's disease and many of these other dementias. So if you feel that your family member is depressed, you want to deal with that. You want to address it. You want to address it with the antidepressant medications that aren't really too bad in older people, or giving them more outdoor time, more activity, more engagement, more purpose, but make sure depression is coming on your checklist when behavior happens. The third bullet really breaks my heart. I talked a bit about it in our last webinar, but pain. Pain often goes undetected in people with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia. Why? Well, you see, if I had a toothache, I could tell my care partner, hey, I have a toothache. My tooth is really blowing up on me. I think I have an infection. I need to go to a dentist, all right? And hopefully they could arrange that. But when you have dementia, you see, you might experience the pain, but you might not be able to connect the dots. You may not be able to say, nurse, my tooth hurts, I need to go to a dentist. And instead, when you're in pain, what happens to any of us? If your pain escalates, well, we shut down, we withdraw, maybe we slap somebody, we cry, we pace. So be aware that pain is something to look for. And then medication issues, over medication, under medication. Make sure you talk to your pharmacist, your doctor, because sometimes people are taking a combination of over-the-counter meds or other meds that can be triggering problems, and you want to take a look for that. Certainly, in my experience, we'll talk about in a minute, the psychotropic meds, they can sometimes save the day. We'll talk about that. But it seems counterintuitive, but there are behaviors that happen when you over-medicate people with these psych meds. And so it's that balance that's very, very difficult to achieve sometimes. Again, on my last workshop, I have a couple of sort of themes I always like to talk about when I give these general talks. But I think a really good rule of thumb for any of you family members or even professionals watching today is remember, as I said a couple weeks ago, Alzheimer's disease is sort of like a slow and lazy river, okay? I tried to find a picture of that lovely river you can float down in Honolulu or in Hawaii, but I may have got a wrong picture here. But anyway, sudden changes are not the normal path of dementia. So if you're a family caregiver and mom is doing like this, you know, it's a slow progressive disease. These dementias are almost all progressive, but if one day, boom, they're not doing well, it means they're ill or something's going on. A sudden change is not a typical aspect of dementia. So again, as we shift to just sort of a bit more philosophy about behaviors in general, I hope I can kind of really drive home the point today that the best we can, I encourage you, and we're all human, we get frustrated and angry ourselves, but try not to label a behavior good or bad. We just try to accept it for what it is. So sometimes a behavior that's causing us a problem doesn't cause them a problem. So for example, maybe you're someone living in assisted living and a resident's getting up at midnight and walking around for a couple of hours. Well, with an unskilled, uneducated staff or a staff that isn't too sophisticated, they may say, oh, what's wrong with George? Why isn't he sleeping? Why is he up at late at night? Well, maybe he was a night watchman. Maybe he's always been a night owl, right? And so maybe he woke up because people get their sleep cycles, turned around. Maybe he thinks he's late for work. So you see, even though we might think, oh my gosh, what a problem, bad behavior, he's getting up at midnight. Well, for him, it just might be part of his normal life. So we try to approach these in a more neutral fashion, a more positive fashion, which I think opens our minds for more creative approaches. Okay, let's get on to some specific topics here, not necessarily in order of importance, but I wanted to cover some of the key behaviors that I'm often asked about, and hopefully there'll be some good ideas here for you. As Ray mentioned, I think this will be recorded and available for you to go back through, and I think we can even share some of the PowerPoints if you need some of these slides. So apathy. I often like to say that people with dementia, they kind of lose their start button, they lose that get up and go. In fact, the Alzheimer's Association, one of my favorite downloads from their website, I think is the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia. And one of them is apathy, people not doing the things they've always done. So how do we get mom to leave the house? How do we get dad to do a project? Well, a couple of thoughts I have. One is tie it into something from their life story, a favorite food, a favorite activity. Hey, dad, the football game's about to begin, or giving someone their ukulele, or, mother, come with me. The garden's so beautiful right now, and I know you love the roses, and maybe mom's always been an avid gardener. So again, think about something from their life story that might entice them. This third bullet is a good one, and basically it's to try 3 times to turn a no into a yes. Because again, they often say no to things. They don't really quite know what we're asking. Pardon me. So let's say back with the garden example, and I've often used this even in my teaching in Hawaii, you might say to someone, Mary, how about we go out to the garden today? And Mary says no. And you say, Mary, gosh, there's so many beautiful pink flowers right now, and that's your favorite color. I really think you should go. Well, I don't think so, dear. I'm awfully tired. And then maybe you take your arm and say, now, Miss Mary, please come. I could sure use your help. I want to have you give me your opinion about how the gardener is doing. Oh, okay. So again, this idea of encouraging people to come and do something that you think they'll enjoy. Don't give up on the first time. So again, come with me. Would you come with me? Would you help me? Don't say, would you like to, if you can. Again, invite them, and hopefully you can get them to start moving and come with you. Show your enthusiasm. That enthusiasm is infectious. We can't drag people to things. We can't force them to do things, but often these approaches will help. Agitation, okay, it's an interesting word because I think all of us get agitated from time to time. Certainly during this COVID-19 crisis, if I watch too much CNN or news, I get a bit agitated. But with dementia, sometimes someone might be sitting in a comfortable chair at home, and you can almost begin to see them wind up, all right? So you want to look for triggers. It may be a certain time of the day. Maybe the grandchildren have all come over and visited, and it was just a bit too much. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they're not feeling well. So look for triggers to the agitation. Substitute some favorite activities and even purpose. Hey, Mom, I'm so behind on folding the laundry. Would you help me? And maybe that can, again, give her something to do. Music, as you'll hear me say throughout this presentation, I think music is the language of dementia. It's incredible how music, just like for all of us, changes mood, fosters happiness. We listen to our favorite country western song, or for some people, maybe even a gospel or faith-related song. All of these are very good. So music can be calming. Exercise. I know my team at the Plaza, we very much subscribe to the idea that exercise is so important with dementia care. We try to do it twice a day, but exercise uses up that energy and can be very important. There's actually research, by the way, the Alzheimer's Association is a big proponent of this, that people who exercise regularly may get Alzheimer's disease later in life than people who don't. And if you have Alzheimer's and you stay physically active, it maybe will slow it down. So exercise is very good. More time out of doors, certainly a beautiful thing about living in Hawaii. And again, maybe if someone's agitated and they're fidgeting a lot, put together a little fidget basket with things they can hold and touch, and maybe things they can squeeze balls, or various things like that, so they have some things to do with their hands. And if someone's always walking, you know what? Walk with them, give them their sandwich while they're walking, do whatever you can to still kind of meet them where they are. Anger. One of the themes I hope I can lift up during this presentation is that all of these behaviors, many of these emotions, are things that any of us have. How many of you have been stuck in traffic, particularly before COVID-19 emptied our highways, waiting in a long line, being put on hold, things that just sort of drive you a little bit crazy, right? And they can make us angry if they happen over time. Well, same for people with dementia. They get angry because, again, time of day, confusion about time and place. They may be tired late in the afternoon. They've been working hard to keep up and figure things out. Exhaustion can trigger emotion and anger. All right. Again, we know to look for pain. Anger. Someone's really beginning to lose it. I want you all to step back. Okay. Don't get in someone's face. Keep yourself safe. Because sometimes if you just give them their space, they will calm down. Okay. Particularly if they're not in a dangerous situation for themselves. And with anger, again, the person might say some hurtful things. It happens. Again, they're frustrated. Dementia means, again, people with dementia, sometimes they know what they've lost. Imagine, having to give up your car, give up your checkbook, give up your credit cards, having to leave your job. A lot of losses, having to leave your house to move into assisted living or senior living, right? So many of them are aware of their losses, and they may be upset and angry about that. So again, be forgiving, apologize, say, I'm so sorry you're feeling bad. I'll try to do better next time. Do whatever you can. And then one idea I have is to brainstorm with your family unit, with friends and family who know the person, and just try to brainstorm some different approaches. That can be good with a lot of these behaviors. Can we come up with 3 or 4 new ideas? Care refusal. I've already had one question that came in about bathing, which we could probably do a full hour on. Well, again, care refusal. Okay, well, how would most of us feel if someone wanted to give us a shower, change our soiled briefs, feed us, right? Give us medicines that we don't always know what they are. So the care refusal does make sense. And I've had some people say that, hey, maybe it's their way of even establishing their independence and having some control in their life. So those are all certainly possibilities. But arguably, we want our family member to not run around in soiled briefs. We want someone to get a shower, not have body odor. We want someone to be put together the best we can. So try to reframe care refusal almost like an activity. Start off with a good space. Mom, it's so good to see you. Oh my gosh. I was thinking about how, you won the Teacher of the Year award for 3 years in a row. That's amazing. I brought you your hot chocolate or whatever. Just approach with a compliment, a little piece of their life story, kind of put them at ease. And as you're doing care, I think a lot of good dementia care is really us not taking ourselves too seriously. So I've done things like, oh my goodness, I'm so clumsy. Oh my goodness, I'm all hands. Would you help me? Oh, please forgive me. We'll get through this together. And maybe I'm changing someone's briefs, right? So things like that can kind of lighten the mood. If you are in a professional setting, some of you listening in may work in assisted living or retirement living. It's so interesting, but sometimes someone living with dementia, they like you, they don't like you, they don't like you. So again, there may be a certain staff member who really has that knack of getting it all right. So if you do have someone like that, try to encourage that person to do it, or find out their techniques. When you're doing care, like maybe even giving someone their pills, if they refuse, don't argue. Say, oh gosh, you've already had your pills? I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. And maybe you come back 15 or 20 minutes later and their forgetfulness is such that they'll take it the second time, okay? So again, use a light touch, use some finesse. This one is kind of a tricky one. It doesn't always work, but blame the doctor. Mother, I know you don't want to take these pills, but doctor's orders. We can't let the doctor down. Good doctors are so hard to find. Here we go. Come on, bottoms up. Let's take those pills. Let's make the doctor happy. All of these things might help. By the way, with the bathing piece, there's a really good resource called Bathing Without a Battle by Joanne Rader. A few quick tips on bathing, because I know we had a question about that earlier. Be all set, be all prepared, have the bath or shower ready to go. Be sure to think about even changing some of your language. Mother, your spa appointment it's about to start. Maybe look at some new products where you can give someone a sponge bath or use some even the various soaps that don't take water. Be creative. There are some good resources. I think there might even be some Alzheimer's Association handouts about bathing. I think there are ways to get around it and make it happen. And again, we can talk more about that later in the Q&A if you'd like. Delusions. This is a definition that's a good one for all of you to know. A delusion is a fixed false idea, okay? A fixed false idea, very common with dementia. And you may be wondering, gosh, why does David have a picture up of a fence? Well, I'll tell this story very quickly, but it's probably one of my favorite and best examples of a delusion and how you deal with it. I used to live in Santa Barbara, and I remember many years ago getting a call from a woman named Catherine about her partner, Charlie, and he woke up one morning and he said, the neighbors, they've moved the fence. They're trying to steal my land. They've moved the fence 3 feet. Now his wife went out there, bewildered, thinking, oh my gosh. And she discovered that the fence was where it always has been, that the fence had not moved. But for some reason, her husband with Alzheimer's disease developed this delusion, the fixed false idea that they moved the fence. Now, it got a little bit thorny because he went next door and was pounding on their door, accusing them of various things. And, really, he was really irate because he genuinely thought this was happening. Now, when these happen, ask yourself, would it help to argue with Charlie, correct him, pull out the deed or the plot of land, call the city, tell him you're wrong, we're right? Most likely not. So after a few misfires, honestly, Catherine moved to a different place. Honey, I'm so sorry about this. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry this is upsetting. We're working on it. I've called the city. We're going to see what we can do. Oh my goodness, bureaucracy works slowly. I'm so sorry that you think this might have happened. And basically by kind of letting him know she believed him, letting him know she was concerned, talking to the neighbors, educating them about what was happening. What happened was eventually, as she sort of waited him out with the delusion, poof, one day it was gone. So remember, don't argue, don't correct. Make sure that the person with dementia feels that you are on their side. Exit seeking. In our industry of long-term care, we often use the word elopement, which I've never quite liked, but basically, people with dementia sometimes take off. Again, why? Well, they have places to be and places to go, people to see and places to go. So again, this is something any of us might do, but of course, in all seriousness for a moment here, being very serious, this can be very life-threatening and risky. If someone wanders off in the middle of the night, they could fall and they could not be found. They could go into shrubs or the rainforest, and we could really be in trouble. They could get hit by a car. So certainly, if you're at home, be aware that this is an issue, okay? Work to create a safer environment. Maybe put some bells on the door, certain kinds of locks that you can kind of control, or make sure you have some photographs of them so that if something happens, you can show the authorities. In general, the environmental fixes are often best here. But there is a good program called the Alzheimer's Association Medic Alert Wandering Support Program. We can register somebody, get a bracelet, and it's all their photos go online. So if by chance they do wander off, you can call a number, and that number can be, that photograph can be emailed out electronically to all the first responders. Forgive me, I don't know if Hawaii has a more distinctive or unique statewide program, but I'm sure our friends at the Plaza can find out for you, or the Alzheimer's Association, or some of your senior centers, if there is a specific Hawaii program. But be aware this can happen, and do your best for, being diligent, because this is potentially very life-threatening. Paranoia. Well, again, many of us might be paranoid. If I'm, in a big city at night and I see two people following me and it's sort of late at night, I might begin to worry, like, gee, are they gonna maybe rob me? Okay. Again, paranoia is something all of us can have. Why might somebody with dementia be paranoid? Well, obviously they don't always know what's happening around them. They're forgetful. They, as I said earlier, they might put their purse under the pillow. They might be sure that their wallet had $500 in it when it only had $5, right? So when someone gets suspicious, and of course, frankly, they may not remember who you are, even if you're a family member. People, they'll say, are you my husband? Or are you my brother? Are you my son? They begin to lose this identity. So who is this person in my home? It can really be a tough one. So what do? Well, identify yourself, reassure. Hi, hey mom, good morning. It's David, your son. How are you? I know who you are. Well, maybe, maybe not. If they're upset about something, listen, be concerned. Oh my, you think that a cat got into your room and, oh my, tell me more, mother. Oh gosh, I know you're frightened of cats. I am so sorry. How did that rascal get in there? We'll work on that together and make sure everything's locked up tight and shipshape. And goodness gracious, we'll try and make sure this doesn't happen again. So again, be reassuring. Paranoia, a couple little tips here, a little bit off, maybe a normal list, but remember environment. Maybe your room, your house is rather dark. Maybe it has heavy curtains and lots of clutter around, shadows, shapes, they can cause confusion. So enhance your home lighting, open up the windows, declutter wherever you can, and even check their glasses. Are they clean? I'm often, when I go into memory care, I'm often taking my tissues and cleaning people's glasses. And if you're in a congregate setting, of course, be aware, like my mother would sometimes put down her glasses, and the lady would put down her glasses, and my mother would put on the wrong glasses. So that would really be, throwing her off. And of course, hearing aid batteries as well. Again, be reassuring. As always, I always like to say socialization is so important with dementia. Socialization is the treatment for dementia. So sometimes, again, if someone's paranoid, you can change the mood with music or dance or being outdoors or doing a creative activity, baking something together. That can kind of calm the person down in certain cases. This is a slide that I wasn't quite sure where to put in the presentation, but I wanted to reflect on this for a moment, because I guess going back to paranoia is a good example. I've had caregivers say to me, maybe I've given a talk somewhere, and they'll say, David, my mother's paranoid about this, paranoid about that, paranoid about this. And I'll say to them, hey, tell me about your mom. What was she like before dementia? What was her personality like? And they'll say, oh, she was super paranoid even back then. So I always like to find, to use a more medical term, I always like to determine what was the person's kind of pre-morbid personality. What was it like before dementia? Because what I found, and this is, I think, so interesting, is maybe someone who is angry and paranoid, they're still angry and paranoid after dementia. I think those are sometimes the toughest ones to change the behavior. It's a long-held behavior that maybe is even amplified by dementia. But let's say you have a person who was always just a sweetheart, very sweet and kind and lovely, and now they're angry and paranoid. Well, those are the ones I love to tackle and think about, how can I maybe get back to their pre-morbid personality? How can we really try to bring back the sweetness? And often you can, because maybe you'll discover again that there's a need that hasn't been met or some other kind of problem. So look to that pre-morbid behavior, post-morbid behavior. I'll tell you one little wrinkle, which is so interesting, and I think part of the mystery of life, but I've met adult children, and I say to them, oh my goodness, I love your mother. She's so sweet. She's so nice. And the children will say to me, oh, she was terrible. She beat me. She was awful. She was critical. She was mean. And what happens is, I don't think any of us are actually born angry. I think we, sometimes get dealt in the school of hard knocks in life, right? So when dementia strikes, you're kind of rolling back in terms of your memories and personality and your younger days. And sometimes people with dementia who've been really tough cookies actually become the sweethearts. And it's an odd thing to happen with dementia, but I've heard that from more than a few caregivers, that hey, David, I'm actually doing better with my mom now than I ever have. My mom, she's forgotten so many of the bad times. Maybe it's time that I forget some of the bad times. So a lot to ponder there. Okay, onward and forward with some of these behaviors here in this very compressed 1-hour webinar. This one, I have to confess, is one that I struggle with when I've been in a caregiving role because, people will sometimes do repetitive actions, repetitive questions. When is my doctor's appointment? When is my doctor's appointment? When is my doctor's appointment? What time is it? What time is it? What time is it? And as you can imagine, this can be so frustrating for the caregiver. You think you're kind of losing your mind with these dozens and dozens of repeated questions. So again, as always, look for triggers, times of days. With earlier stage people, and I don't want to say this works all the time, but you might be able to get some cue cards or leave notes around the house about reminders. Mom, I'll be back at noon, your son David. It can help sometimes with earlier stage people. But the third bullet is the one I want you to think about is, if someone says, now, what time is it? What time is it? Or maybe a better example, when's my doctor's appointment? When's my doctor's appointment? Sometimes you can kind of break the cycle by saying, tell me more about that. Mom, gosh, your doctor's appointment, wow. I forget, Mom, is your doctor a man or a woman? Is she friendly? Oh. Now, do you like her office? Are they always good to you when you get, well, how about that? Yeah. Now I forget, Mom, do they have a big office or is it smaller? And sometimes if you kind of, say, tell me more about that and discuss more of those kind of situations, you can begin to break that cycle, okay? And remember that sometimes repetition is because of anxiety, because of stress. So respond to their emotion versus the content, okay? They just may need a hug and comforting or some attention or their favorite ice cream or a snack or something sitting with them. Sometimes that can break that cycle. Again, distraction with activity and engagement. I will say in the last bullet, sometimes it just comes with the territory. And I talked to one family member recently, and she felt very guilty about it, but her mother, who lives in memory care or assisted living, I guess, not maybe memory care, the mother still has a phone, and the mother will phone her like 30 times a day, 40 times a day. So now this woman said that her technique is really just to let them go to voicemail and just answer them every few hours, because usually it's not anything urgent. That's what seems to have worked for her. She can delete all the repeated messages, and she said it's keeping me sane. So again, I'm not sure if I recommend that or not, but develop your own strategy to kind of break the cycle, because obviously this can be very frustrating. I wanted to bring this topic up again. It probably is worthy of a full hour because it's often overlooked. But people with dementia can become disinhibited. They can kind of do things that might be upsetting to others. They also have confusion. They don't quite know what's happening. They might take off all their clothes and walk down the hallway in assisted living naked because they're hot. They just are kind of not aware of some of the consequences or social norms, right? And so what I wanted to say here about sexual behavior when it happens is that it's really important to recognize that sexuality is part of life. And I think most of us have a need for intimacy, for touch, and being with other people. So if something happens, above all, keep calm and carry on, as they say. Because sometimes, I think maybe because, at least, particularly here in the mainland, we have the Puritans. I think we all are very uptight about sex as citizens of the U.S. And so sometimes these discussions really everyone gets very stressed out. So keep calm. Address an issue around sexuality like you would anything else. Okay, why is this happening? What are some good ideas? Don't be shaming. Do your best to understand that, again, the person doesn't always know what's happening. They may think you're their husband or wife or partner, and so some of these things can happen. If there is a mistaken identity, maybe show a picture. Oh, gosh, George, hey, I'm not your wife. Here's a beautiful picture of your wife. She is really something. You chose well. So again, all of these things can be helpful. And again, there are some online resources if you're going through this to take a look at around sexuality and dementia. But don't shame. Don't be ashamed. Don't shame. Understand this is part of life, and try to approach it like you would anything else. Psychotropic meds, again, I feel like this seminar today has lots of topics we can do a lot on. What happens with behaviors? Sometimes, behaviors can be really, really worrisome. You might have someone who's aggressive and maybe their caregiver is 85 and frail. And what if they hit them or push them down? Sometimes people's agitation is such that you can just see that they're suffering, and how can I fix that? So I will say that there are times when, certain psychotropic meds, these psych meds can really save the day. But remember that in general, they don't tend to work all that well. It's so hard to get the dosage right, the medication right. There are side effects like fall risk. The atypical antipsychotics, some of those medicines have cardiovascular risk. And of course, if you're sedating somebody, their quality of life isn't that great, and they're more risk of falling down. And if they're not moving, more UTIs, all of these things can be a problem. So if your family member is on a psychotropic drug, it seems to be working. I'm not trying to say change it, but be judicious, okay? If you're starting this out for the first time, start low and go slow, an old nursing phrase. And I do think it's worth reevaluating meds regularly because, again, of the side effects of these medications. But again, you've met one person. In some cases, they can be quite successful. One more recommendation here as we kind of begin to get through a lot of different topics in this workshop. I do encourage the family in general to try to get on the same page the best you can. And when it comes to behavior, sometimes you can almost script yourself on how you're going to respond to this. When mother does this, let's all do this. Because imagine, for example, mom has just moved into memory care. She really needs to be there. She was being, she was playing the bogus Canadian lottery. The neighbors were stealing money from her. She was wandering off at night. She moves into assisted living memory care. And she's unhappy and she demands to go home. Well, if one daughter says, oh, mother, I feel so guilty, I feel so terrible, we should have done this. Another daughter says, oh, mom, you're in the Ritz-Carlton, how beautiful. If 5 different daughters and sons are saying 5 different things, I don't think that really helps. In fact, it makes things worse. So if you have a behavior, if you have a challenge, try to script yourself, come up with some common language or themes. And here's a good one, which I really like. Maybe someone's moved to memory care. You can say, Mom, I'm so sorry you don't want to be here right now. Oh, yeah, I understand. It's tough. But Mom, the doctor wants you to be here for the moment. You need to build your strength. And that's a very, to me, life-affirming, interesting example of a good script because you're not lying. The doctor does want her to be there. You're not lying. She does need to build her strength. Almost everybody does. But it's a nice affirming language. And of course, in most cases, even like with my mom, someone moves into memory care and they end up doing pretty well and they make friends and they enjoy the socialization. And so maybe after a few weeks, again, kind of poof, that thought of wanting to go home will diminish and they can be happy and present in the moment. So I want to wind down today by, again, thanking you for being part of the workshop and acknowledging my friends at the Plaza who've adopted the work that I've written with my colleague, Virginia Bell. It was called the best friends approach to dementia care, because we know that relationships are so important. Empathy, affection, communication, all these elements of friendship, I think really create this therapeutic healing environment. So I thought I'd give you 2 super quick examples of how we might approach a behavior or a challenge. So in this case, Harry, perhaps he's a native of New Orleans. He's a younger onset person with dementia under the age of 65. And he's not eating, he's refusing meals, right? So in the best friends approach, we try to say, hey, I wonder what's going on. And perhaps we really study his life story. And we discover, as I mentioned a minute ago, that he is a native of New Orleans, that he's a native Cajun. And what do people from Louisiana tend to like? Hot and spicy food. So even, again, with this approach of how can I be a friend to Harry? Well, in part by knowing him and being creative and trying to, kind of be supportive for him. So now perhaps when I serve him his meatloaf or his chicken or whatever, his omelet in the morning, I have that little bottle of Tabasco sauce or hot sauce. I say, Harry, look what I have just for you, your favorite hot sauce. Here we go. Let the good times roll. And again, someone like Harry, again, jazz, New Orleans music, trivia about his country, maybe doing some pidgin French with him about his home state. All of these things can be very helpful in helping him feel safe and secure and valued in memory care now. One a little bit more similar to Hawaii. Perhaps you have someone in your home or someone living in memory care, and maybe they've lived in Hawaii their whole life. Maybe they've had quite an interesting career as an actor, an entertainer, a musician, all right? And you happen to know they love to play the ukulele, or they're very musical, right? Well, in this case, maybe you invite him to tell his stories. You show some old film clips, if you can find them, from the shows he was on. Maybe he was a guest actor on the original Hawaii Five-0 with Jack Lord. You invite him, if he's living at the Plaza, to play ukulele at the Plaza, and you praise him and thank him for his talent. And what happens is someone like Mike actually feels a sense of purpose and belonging. And there was a resident who actually played the ukulele when I visited one time the Plaza in Waikiki. And I actually thought he was the entertainer, but it turned out he was a resident, very charming. And you could just feel his sense of pride and self-esteem that he had a purpose and people knew who he was. So these are just some things, again, that ways that companies like the Plaza are able to give this really nice person-centered care and relationship-centered care. One little tip, if you are a family caregiver, do a little top 10 card of top 10 things about your family member, so that if someone like an in-home caregiver comes, if they go to a day center, that the staff will know a lot about them, okay? So as we wind down again, a few of these slides were in my last presentation, but I always wanna say that, the treatment for dementia is a therapeutic healing environment. These are all things you wanna be doing the best you can: art and conversation, exercise, learning and growing, using the internet now, Wikipedia, and if your husband grew up in Korea, find some videos of South Korea. Maybe you can find his village or music, things like that. Laughter, it's very infectious. Humor, being out of doors, animals, word games, spirituality, creating an interesting day with meaningful activity. And I think this team, the activity and engagement staff at the Plaza, is super creative. I'm sure they'd be willing to give you some good ideas as well. And I know there's some resources, again, with the Alzheimer's Association. So, certainly we're in a very tough time. We talked about this last time during my last presentation. I just want to, again, focus for a moment here on COVID-19. We're certainly hoping this changes, but, it's been a big challenge because a lot of the services we depend on, the day centers, even sometimes the in-home staff, it's been tricky to keep your network of services going. We have our own fears about the crisis. So what I would suggest to you is be creative, tone down, less CNN, less cable news, because people with dementia are very sensitive to the mood of the room. And if you're watching 24 hours about the crisis, I think that's creating a lot of anxiety for everybody in agitation. Use technology, have a Zoom or Google Meetup support group meeting to attend. Do Zoom meetings with family and friends to help you and the person feel more connected. And of course, as any therapist, I'm sure would say, I'm not a therapist, but focus on what you can control and not what you can't, because there's so many unknowns now, as you well know. So again, what can we all do, particularly those who are living in Hawaii? Again, be purposeful in spending time outside. It gives you natural vitamin D, it's spiritual, it's sensory. Work on your family member's social history, write a little mini memoir. This can be so helpful when care comes in later. Order some favorite foods and treats. Now is the time to drink the good wine and have chocolate, have a good dessert. But live it up the best you can with some of the treats and nice things someone likes, enjoying times with animals, doing an online exercise class. Maybe it's time to, be purposeful. Hey, Mom, I hear the local animal shelters had a lot of budget cuts. Let's make some dog biscuits for them, or writing letters of appreciation, or creating some baked goods for first responders. All of those things can be so helpful. And of course, music. So again, resources, telemedicine, I think there are a lot of resources there. The Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline with actually many languages available. So be creative and do all you can. Don't wait to use services. Kind of making that post-COVID-19 game plan about what you want to do next can be very, very helpful. And in honor of, I think, one of our heroes, Dr. Fauci, I was sort of searching the internet, looking at some ideas from him. Because I will say I'm kind of the eternal optimist, and I have a lot of optimism in science and in our pharma companies and in some of the amazing scientists out there. Dr. Fauci says you can't rush the science, but when the science points you in the right direction, then you can start rushing. So let's hope we all start rushing very soon to greater success with dementia care. Thank you very much, Ray, for always your great guidance. I love the spirit that you have, Ray, and so many of your colleagues at the Plaza Assisted Living, that you work hard. It's a serious subject, but we also have some fun. And now I think we've got 10 or 11 minutes for Q&A, and I'm happy, Ray, for you to share some questions with me or for any new questions to come in.
Oh, yes. Thank you, David. That was very informative. I didn't get any questions coming in right now from the panel, but I did have an emailed question. And one of the questions were, her mom is been blind all her life, and she used to be very active and engaged. And now she's refusing to participate in activities. And she's struggling with how to encourage her to do things. So any feedback or suggestions?
Sure. And please do feel free to type any questions you have in the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to get through them. Well, Ray, you raise a really, really challenging piece. And I remember when I worked and lived in Santa Barbara for 10 years, the Alzheimer's Association was right across the street almost from the Braille Institute. And so we actually talked with them quite a lot about, serving people with visual limitations. So a couple of thoughts I have. Even if your mother had full vision, it's not unusual for people to begin to kind of develop some apathy, not do the things they've always done. So, certainly assess her broad good health and see how she's doing. Sometimes people don't want to go out because, again, of pain or discomfort. I think I would do your best to not give up on her, to make sure that you can at least get her out of doors where there's sunshine on her skin. I think tactile and touch is important. Music therapy, I think, becomes even more important for someone who's vision impaired. And I would keep, again, that idea of try 3 times to turn a no into a yes. Mother, I really would like to go and just sit by the beach for an hour and have a nice cup of coffee and a donut. Let's go. I need your company. I'm feeling a bit blue right now. Would you come with me? Sometimes people will do things for others that they won't do for themselves. Or maybe you're making a gift for the grandchildren or a video for the grandchildren. So those are some of the finesses you can do.
Thank you, David. Okay, another one came in. My mother-in-law is convinced that there are people in her house and will sometimes affect her sleep at night. What is a good response?
Well, again, we talked about the word delusion, the fixed false idea. A couple of thoughts I have, take a look at the environment. I mean, it's maybe a long shot, but maybe there's a leaking pipe, or, maybe there's a window with some street noises or bird noises or some things going on that she's hearing or misinterpreting. I would also, again, up the lighting during the day, open the windows, try to declutter the house, because again, people with dementia, they have visual spatial problems. They see a lot of things around. They might think it's a real person. So work on the environment. And then I think gentle reassurance, Mom, hey, I've made the rounds. Everything's locked up. The house is ship-shape. We're in good shape. And if she still feels that way, say, Mother, I'm so sorry. Gosh, I know it can be tough. There are families who try to be honest, say, Mom, I don't see the people, but I believe that you do, and maybe our brain is just playing a bit of a trick on us. So they read your emotion, read your voice, and that can be helpful.
Okay, another one. My 91-year-old father lives at another assisted living and continues to drive off campus despite the manager speaking to him. Even his friends don't want to speak to him because they're afraid he'll bring the virus there. What can we say to him besides what they've already been telling him based on what the managers say at this assisted living? Any ideas of other alternatives?
Oh boy. Okay, so if I understand the question right, your family members not social distancing, they're taking off, doing their own thing, and it's causing a lot of challenges. It's so tough because even within a memory care neighborhood, if there's a resident who's always gone up and hugged people, it's really hard to cognitively say now, please keep us 6 feet away because there's a worldwide pandemic happening. They just don't get it, or they don't retain the information. So a couple of thoughts I have is, one is, again, think about a script for him. There may be something you can devise with being creative. George, I'm just brainstorming for a moment here, but George, I think the weather's a bit tricky today. I think maybe it'd be better to stay close to home because, who knows about the weather, or, again, we need your help for a project. The doctor doesn't want you to be off today. If he has a car, maybe there's a way to get rid of the car. But I think otherwise, you're just gonna almost have to punt and do your best, to see if he might wear a mask, or if the staff can encourage people to keep their distance from them. I always am such a fan of being as truthful as you can be, but one caregiver said, "Hey, Dad, I have a bit of a bug. I think I'm coming down with a bad cold. I don't want you to get my cold. So, hey, keep your distance," So again, there may be some language that if everyone gets the same page, they can. But unfortunately, you do have a dilemma there. It's very tough because of their forgetfulness and their lack of understanding. So do your best, try some of these things, and maybe ask for a care plan meeting with the staff to see if you can brainstorm some ideas, some additional ideas.
Thanks, David. Another one, how do you respond when a loved one talks about wanting to die?
Oh boy. Well, I think first of all, treat it in an authentic way. They may be very sad and aware of their limitations and what's going on. And I would just be a good listener. Mom, I am so sorry. I understand why you feel that way, and it's tough. Tell me more about it. Would you like to talk about it? Okay. So I would always treat it in a very authentic adult way, discuss it, find out what's bothering them, because maybe it is something that you can kind of add to. Maybe they miss their dog that died, and maybe you can then add some more pet therapy. Now, if you think they're deeply depressed or clinically depressed, again, I would treat that with medicine and other things as well. But a lot of people with dementia, they know what has happened to them. They know their losses, and they are sad about it, and they are depressed about it. So I think just being a good shoulder to cry on and visit with them can be very authentic. I can't remember my numbers, but very few people with dementia actually do take their own lives. It's pretty rare, but it has happened. But I think in this case, just be a good listener, be empathetic. Don't try to just artificially cheer them up or negate their feelings.
Okay, another one. Husband and wife are living in a memory care, and wife believes we're a brothel, and staff are being inappropriate with her spouse and then providing care. She gets physical with him and with staff. We separated them into different apartments. However, the behaviors continue. What can we do to redirect her successfully?
Okay, well, I had to laugh a little bit because I remember years ago being with a family, and the wife said that her husband was bringing in ladies of ill repute at night. So the brothel theme could be a whole new book, I guess. Again, a delusion, a fixed false idea. Why is my husband here? Why am I here with him? Who are all these women running around, right? Because a lot of care staff are women versus men in our country. So I think gentle cueing, now mother, goodness, this is not a brothel, you're in this beautiful retirement home and here we are. So I think gentle reassurance. I think maybe ask the staff to do a care plan and try to come up with new ideas, brainstorming ways to reassure her. Again, I would look at her pre-morbid, post-morbid personality. Maybe she's always had a lot of jealousy issues or other things that are going on. I'm not a psychoanalytical person, but sometimes these delusions do have relationships to trauma in the past. Maybe her father had visited brothels or something, and she has some trauma associated with it. So do some digging in her life story, organize a care plan, try to come up with some good conversation cues for her, and that might help.
Thanks. We have one more. So my dad isn't able to do his own finances anymore, and he feels like his children are stealing his money. He cries because he thinks that they are betraying him.
Okay. So tough. Well, let me share with you something that a friend of mine did that I thought was really brilliant. They do the father's bills because he was not able to. Obviously, many people with dementia can't. But they would write out the checks and bring them to his father and say, Dad, I have your accounts all ready for review. Here you go. And they would show him the various things, and he could still sign his name to a check. And they even had the statements, and they had, I thought it was brilliant. They had an old fashioned, like red kind of paid stamp. So they have the father stamp the bill, and initial, and they would say, Dad, thank you so much. What would I do without you? This idea of being affirming and acknowledging that the person still wants some control over their life. So if that's possible, to give him some part of the bill paying or involve him, that might help.
Okay, so we are at 3:00. And I know there's a bunch more questions that I've been getting. What we can do is have these questions answered via email, or there's our contact information here on the screen. So if you folks want to email it to us directly, we can go ahead and get you folks those answers. I don't have the contact information directly, and I think once we log off Zoom, the questions and answers do disappear. So I just want to make sure that we are able to answer everyone's questions. And then I do want to thank you, David. That was very informative. I'm sure a lot of us had a lot of good takeaways from this. And then just so you folks know, once again, this webinar will be posted on our website probably Monday, June 1st. So you guys have access to the website or the webinar if you want to go back and listen to some of the different strategies that David spoke about today. But other than that, we thank you all for joining us and look forward to hopefully you joining our other sessions coming up in the next couple weeks.
Thank you, Ray. And I just want to interject real quickly that the Plaza is sponsoring their third annual Alzheimer's disease conference this year on September 21, which is World Alzheimer's Day. And it's a benefit and done in conjunction with the Alzheimer's Association. One of the speakers is Helen Kales, a very renowned geropsychiatrist who will have some very fascinating things to say via Zoom, in this case, about behaviors and medication. So put that on your calendar, September 21 for the Alzheimer's Association and Plaza Dementia Conference.
Thanks, David. Thank you so much. Well, that's it for today. I hope everyone enjoys the weekend and this beautiful weather, and stay safe and stay healthy. And we're more than happy once again to answer any questions. So feel free to jot down in the next couple minutes both of our emails, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you.
Aloha.